We're just gonna welcome people in. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're going to begin in just a moment. Give it a couple of minutes for people to join us, but thank you very much for your patience. I am Sinead and get to be the facilitator of this wonderful conversation this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you are in the world. So we'll just give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we will dive into this conversation with the extraordinary people that we have on this call. But thank you for being with us, and thank you for making the time. So yeah, I could keep talking and rambling, as everybody else on this call knows. But if you would like to engage, as Laura has just done in the chat box below, please do throughout. So we'll give it just another 10 or 20 seconds. Okay, I think we're in a good place to get started. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Sinead Burke. I am the CEO of Tilting the Lens, which is an accessibility consultancy. To give a visual description of myself, am a white woman with brown hair that has been recently coiffed and curled, not by myself. And I'm wearing a blue knit dress with gorgeous hexagons on it, and it is full length. I identify as a physically disabled and queer woman. I feel so lucky to be able to facilitate this conversation today and to be joined by some of the people that I admire most. Almost a year ago, we began a project that felt monumental at the time. And in many ways, the people who are part of this call have been instrumental in the impact that it has been. I'm speaking vaguely, but it is the Reframing Fashion issue of British Vogue, which is currently on newsstands right now. But almost a year ago, the editor-in-chief of British Vogue, Edward Enninful, reached out to me and my team at Tilting the Lens and asked us to support in the creation of both a process and a product that would hopefully move the dial in representation and access. There is so much more work to do. But today I get to be joined by some of the people who are on the covers of these magazines, and they are extraordinary in their own right, as is everybody in the portfolio. But the purpose of these webinars at Tilting the Lens is really to expand the definition of accessibility, because historically, in a fashion sense, when we talk about things being accessible, we usually mean that they're more affordable or that they're available, or if something is accessible, it's usually compliant. So the first question that I want to ask everybody in this group is how do you define or describe accessibility? But before we jump into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the access considerations. So there is AI captions enabled within this session. If you would like to use them, please go to the bottom of the screen and click the box as regards to captions. We are joined by a BSL and an ASL interpreter. Everybody will give visual descriptions of themselves, and everybody will speak hopefully slowly if they're not too nervous for greater comprehension and consideration. But also know that people are coming to this conversation as they are. Some speakers may speak very fast, some may speak in long sentences, and others in 2 words. We ask for you to give patience and flexibility for everybody to show up as they are in this moment, and we welcome you to do the same. So I'm going to go to the people on this call to ask them to visually describe themselves and to give a definition of how they describe accessibility and what it means to them. I'm going to do this in alphabetical order in thinking of equality as regards to first names rather than surnames. So I have the great joy and privilege of now passing to Erin Rose Phillip. Erin, who are you? What do you look like? How do you show up in the world? How do you define accessibility?
Good morning and evening, everyone, to everyone watching. My name is Erin Rose Phillip. I'm a 22-year-old Black transgender woman who is physically disabled and who uses a motorized wheelchair. Today, I'm wearing a striped long sleeve shirt with black stripes and a white background. I have blue and black hair, and I'm wearing alternative goth inspired makeup. And I feel so happy to be with you all. I'm so honored to join Sinead and the other incredible cover stars who will be on today's panel. I feel so blessed and happy to be here. And I'm so happy to start off this conversation with talking about what accessibility means to me. What accessibility means to me personally is the the sort of like infrastructures made so that everyone is able to live life physically. That's what accessibility means to me. Accessibility means a systemical structure in place that is made to enable everyone physically and in the scope of society as well.
I mean, I love that broad remit. And I love that you introduce yourself by saying that you are now 22. I had the great honor of being with you on your most recent birthday, which is when and where we did such a wonderful conversation and interview for the British Vogue magazine.
Indeed, that was such a special day. I'm so happy we had that.
Then she left me to go to a party, but fine.
Miss Sinead was booked and busy, y'all.
I want to come to Ellie, you next. Ellie, if you could give me a visual description of yourself, please, and then tell me, what does accessibility mean to you?
Right, so, hi, I'm Ellie. I'm a white female with long brown hair and green eyes, and I have Down syndrome. Now I'm wearing a black top with Vogue written on it in white. I'm 21 years old, and I'm a British model. And it means to be understood and being able to join in activities with disabilities.
Ellie, I have to say, when I watched the video of all of us talking about ourselves, our work, our practices, our belief for a better future, the one that has audio description on Vogue, your visual description of yourself at the very beginning makes me laugh and smile with great joy, because you say, hi, I'm Ellie, and I'm a gorgeous girl, as always. And I just want that level of confidence and deep understanding of myself every single day. So thank you so much. Selma, if I could come to you next, who are you? What is your visual description of yourself? And how do you define accessibility?
Hi, hello all loves. I am Selma Blair. I am a 50-year-old white woman that is kind of crunched up in my chair because it's much more comfortable for me to be tucked in to keep my speech more regular. I have bleached blonde hair, don't tell anyone, and that is so natural. And I'm smiling because I'm so grateful to be here with this esteemed company, truly, that teaches me so much, because while I have had invisible illness or chronic illness, or maybe even kind of mental extremes in my life, I have not been called disabled until I realized I was, maybe 5 years ago, with the last hit of an MS flare. And so I am so grateful to be welcomed into this community, because I have kind of felt an other in all aspects of my life. I was kind of the odd one that looked non-disabled, but inside I felt very confused why it was so difficult to get along in this non-disabled world when I seemed totally capable, but had a hard time. My idea of accessibility, well, kind of vague, but really a systematic shift in being thoughtful towards all our fellow beings, just thoughtful, just seeing what could make things a little more workable in the day of people around us, if we so have time, just being more aware and non-judgmental. Judging my needs for me gets frustrating. But to me, it is making an effort and making it happen so that, like Erin said, we all can be on equal ground with our physical, at the very least, boundaries. Really helping us all get along in this world, because our brains are all very capable of being here and sharing, and we're all really beautiful, by the way.
And with our first question kind of coming to a close there, I do want to say to the people who are in the audience and are watching, this is not merely just a 2 or 4-way dialogue. We're conscious that we've got to, in different ways, engage with each other, particularly over this issue, and will over the next 30 minutes. So if you have a question, please, this is your time to ask it. So in terms of the process, if you want to put it in the Q&A box, or if you want to put it in the chat box, Emma and Anya from the Tilting the Lens team are currently fishing them and will send them to us, and we'll voice over them and ensure that everybody can answer them. So if it's an individual or a collective question, do let us know. But Selma, you talked about something really important there, which is for so many people who experience, whether it's a chronic illness, whether it's a mental illness, whether it's an invisible disability, they often don't feel comfortable enough or disabled enough to even identify with that language. And what I loved about there was the power of that reclamation, the power of the invitation to join a collective, a community of people that are so proud of who they are, not despite their differences, but because of it. When we were coming up with the copy for the cover of this issue, dynamic, daring, and disabled, lots of people, and I imagine in your comments too, have questioned whether or not disabled is the right word, because are we disabled, or are we just differently able? Do we have special needs, or are we people with disabilities? And for me, at least, I feel so much a part of Access is about acknowledging the power and the importance of disability first and disabled people as a collective. But I want to ask you all a question. You know, I didn't get to be in the room, because it would have been strange and a bit odd if I was, when you got the news about participating in this issue or the first invitation. I want to know, like, where were you? What did you think it was? What was it like? What was your response to it in that moment? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
You go first, Aaron.
Okay, so, oh my gosh, so it was, I think this was between January and February. It was like I woke up one morning, I was in my bed, and I have my phone. I use my phone in my bed to check my emails and stuff, as I do when I get up, especially on like a Monday morning. And I remember I got up to open my text, and I got a text from my agent, Richie, and Richie explained to me that there was an option for British Vogue that the team was interested in confirming me for. And I was so blown away by that. I honestly, because what it is that I have had the honor and pleasure of working for Vogue throughout my career as of right now. And it is one of my dreams come true to have worked for Vogue, but British Vogue is something that has like, that's one of the first fashion magazines I ever read. And so for them to kind of make this effort of wanting to not only have me for the issue, but when they explained what it was for, it was this portfolio of disabled changemakers being profiled for British Vogue. I remember feeling so honored and so excited that other disabled people in the community were going to be a part of this with me. And I didn't know to what extent this was going to be, but I just remember feeling such a shock and such a deep sense of honor and love and happiness and excitement. And yeah.
I think we were DMing around the time, and I had slightly more information than you did and pretended and couldn't actually say anything. I was so thrilled by your excitement or enthusiasm. Selma, what about you?
Gosh, I was in New York. I was finishing a campaign for Laline clothing. And it was the first time I had been in front of a camera really in a while, as any type of like model. And I really thought those days were really gone, because that day was a really big one to me. But then when Troy, who is my manager, but also my real support and really is kind of the Pied Piper of all of us who need, a little ally. He said, Edward and Tilting the Lens, are really involved in making this next issue, one of disability. And I had a feeling who was involved, and I was so honored to be among these incredible people, because I hadn't felt a part of in fashion for a while, even though I still love it. So this felt like the most amazing homecoming, and of being seen, of thinking I had any part in helping other really deserving fashionistas being seen. It was like Yes, thank you. I didn't know if I'd ever be on a cover, but I was just going to be thrilled if I was holding hands or anywhere near any of this, because I wanted to be touched by a little bit of greatness, I have to say. And I felt it. And that's what greatness felt like to me now. The people that were coming forward and the allies, and fashion so has its own language that I never felt it mattered, if I was like a short woman from the Midwest that dreamed to be a woman, and then there's a much shorter woman on the cover, and it's like, oh my God, the dreams can just keep dreaming because we have a lot to back it up. I mean, Edward and Sinead are so incredibly gifted in disrupting, as wonderful disruptors. So to be a part of it, I just felt the whole zeitgeist of it, and I just couldn't wait to get some makeup on and to get my picture taken again.
Ellie, what about you? What did you think when it first came through and you were going to be in Vogue?
So my agent called up my mum, and I'm so happy and excited, and I want to scream. But my reaction to being invited to British Vogue was like, I wanted to scream and cry, but okay. But a dream coming true, so proud I was. I couldn't believe it, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ellie, I have to agree with you. That mixed emotion of screaming and crying feels and resonates really deeply with me. I think I was slightly different to my initial reaction to some of you. I was terrified, and I'll share this with you and in the privacy of the 100 or so people that are watching. But I felt this huge expectation of trying to represent our community as fully, as intersectionally as possible, all the while knowing that it would be impossible to do so because our community is bigger brilliantly than 19, 25, 35 pages. It's bigger than one issue. It's bigger than one industry. And what I hoped was that this would be something that would move the dial, not just in terms of those who were on the covers, those who were featured, those who were on the crew, those who were part of the set, those who supported in making the issue itself accessible, but all the while knowing that not everything is possible. And I think often for me, a definition of accessibility is about progress and not perfection. And for me, that's what underlines this whole project, that this is about progress, not perfection, though of course each of us are perfect in our own ways. Don't talk to our therapists, our agents, our moms, our managers, or our colleagues. But that idea of it being a collective and shared response, I think, is incredibly powerful. One of the things that I wanted to get a sense of, particularly because the three of you have been on set, whether it's film and television, whether it's a fashion shoots, you've been on set a lot. And this is not me fishing for compliments. But what I wanted to get a sense of was this set more accessible? Where were the challenges? Where were the barriers? And if it was or if it wasn't, what made the difference? Because I think we can talk about the work that we did, which was editing and auditing studios, getting greater information for them around access, choosing better locations. But I think particularly as disabled people, what helped to make it more accessible and what continues to be a barrier in the place of doing projects like this?
I mean, for me, the comfort, as I've kind of been new to navigating the space, as my needs have changed in the past few years. I've been afraid to be on sets, more acting sets, because of consistency of speech or movement is still kind of wonky to people. So to get my feet wet on sets that have been so thoughtfully arranged, that the bathroom, that I knew how far it would be if there was a panic, and that I knew that everyone was aware that we were here for each other. And there was no one that would get mad if I had to hold things up or sit down and you're gonna see my underwear half on, things that kind of would get me nervous in the past. It was a welcoming, practical space. And that's conserved energy for me. Those are the little things that for me make a difference, whether I can stay 2 hours or 6 hours, and I felt I could stay because it was understood if I needed water. I mean, it was just more easily there, as it can be on all sets. That should be on all sets, but to know that it was really thought of, I felt very safe and I could save energy for me.
I think that notion of safety is so important. And often when we think of it, to your point, it's whether or not we're in danger. And maybe our mind rushes to whether it's fire or harm. But I think what you're also speaking to there is psychological safety, knowing that you manage and count your spoons, knowing that other people have undertaken the work. Because I think often as disabled people, particularly when we are the first or often the exception in spaces, we are required to do the labor to set ourselves up for success in the way that non-disabled people are often not, or are not thoughtful, to your point earlier. So the idea that you can come into a space and take a deep breath and just do your job should not be remarkable, but it is.
Right. It does. Being able to exhale and do your job can be a saving grace for me to have a very rough day or having a much smoother one. And just encountering it in travel yesterday, some impatient things and things not going right. And then as soon as I get a little Tourette's, it's like, we're going to call the police if you don't be quiet, you know, and then I get on the ground and I'm terrified. And it was my first real time as a grown-up with this disability going, oh my God, I'm going to be understood and I'm going to be kicked out of this airport because they think I'm acting up. And the only thing this has to do with it is I realize how much a safe space matters, because I could probably fake it long enough or look non-disabled or communicate in a clear way. But when I am pushed into fight or flight, I realize it can be tricky and people can get scared of me. And then I'm trying to manage everything and then I am not useful. And I get scared. So it is so important when you feel safe that you can communicate and you can stand up taller in my shoulders, that I can breathe better. They seem small, but it is that act of realizing we all have needs and we all want to make sure everyone has their moment, whether they're non-disabled or not. I'm very aware of that. And I really, had a horrific day yesterday and it'll still scar me, but I have to think of what was created on this set. And that sticks with me, that if Ellie and Aaron, everything can go through their lives and they can show up so beautiful and proud on this set, then I will just keep aiming for this kind of experience.
Well, firstly, thank you for sharing that. And
thank you.
It's really terrible that yesterday was such an awful day.
Yeah, you know, it happens. And sometimes you fall apart and go, wow, this was not the best case scenario, but this shoot was the best case scenario. So it is amazing to know it is there. It can be created.
And I think the
We
one thing,
love you so much.
yeah, it's also that like there are almost 100 people on this call, right? That in a moment where you are feeling that for whatever reason, you are not being set up for success, you do not feel safe. It shouldn't always be up to the individual who is feeling so marginalized and so vulnerable in the moment to also have to roll up their sleeves and advocate for themselves. This is the importance of allyship. This is the importance of other people's awareness increasing so that they too can participate in this engagement and actually explain to people, whether it's those in influence or in power, in order to change the system. So thank you. Ellie, I want to come to you. What was your experience like being on set? Now, I had the great honor of being on set with you that day and got to see you in all of your splendor. There's this amazing photo of you with your arms out wide, running outdoors. Ellie, it was freezing. I was there with you. You looked like you were in the summer temperatures.
Yes.
It was Baltic,
Yeah.
London. How was your time on set?
So on the set, it was amazing. And I loved it. And it felt special to me. And it was fabulous.
Well, I'm so glad, because the images that came from that are just truly extraordinary. And I think about the number of conversations that I've had, Ellie, with people who see the cover of your magazine, whether it's in their local supermarket or store, and are overwhelmed by the fact that this hasn't really happened before, and also your eye contact in those moments and in those issues. It is just, I feel like you follow me around the store when I'm in a store from the shelf. It's just beautiful, beautiful image. Erin Rose, we've talked a little bit before around the need to consider accessibility, whether it's in castings, whether it's in set, and it's so important to you in your job. But What was it like being on set in London for this specific moment?
My experience at the British Vogue cover story photo shoot with accessibility, I mean, it was honestly just 12 out of 10. I was lucky enough to have my day with Selma, and I met her there. And I just remember, the energy that we both were on, of feeling like we felt so welcome here, whether it was physically guiding ourselves through the space or having the help and accommodations we did need to make our days easier in order to like get through the photo shoot, whether it was dressing, support with like getting through the space, support with actually like posing or anything of the sort, you know, being able to talk to the stylist about what would make us feel not only fashionable and chic, but comfortable, pertaining to our disabilities and a level of comfort and, sensation with clothing at times, being able to talk with the photographer and the producers on set to make it a more, I guess, vast experience for us being disabled on the set. It was just so major. And I felt so lucky to spend time with other disabled talent that day on the set. I remember just feeling so happy that we were all there for this. Um, Selma actually said the same thing that I was thinking of. I had no idea this was a cover shoot at all. And so, just to be there in general at all was literally like the blessing of life. And um, you know, I just remember I had a very chaotic week leading up to the photo shoot. And when I was there, it's just like, oh my gosh, I feel like in my journey of being disabled this far in my career, this is like an experience that makes me feel so happy to do what I do in my life.
And it's amazing that I think each of us in different ways felt that this moment was different because the level of intent, the level of thoughtfulness, but also the level of representation. And I think
Mhm.
you're speaking to there also is there was a lot of the crew who had invisible disabilities too. And I think
Right.
their level of understanding, you talked about the stylist. Kate Phelan did such an incredible job of sitting with people, having a dialogue. I think often in this industry, the stylist tells you what to wear, it's much more authoritative as a position, but it just felt truly collaborative and even influenced by how our own bodies, minds, senses work, which I think was incredibly powerful. I am conscious that the Q&A box is hopping, as is the chat. And as much as I would love to be the one who's holding the microphone and getting to ask you all of the questions, I have the great privilege of doing that regularly. I have via text message or DM, so I want to make sure that other people get that opportunity. So Sarah asks, Vogue and Tilting the Lens took representation from the first cover with me, Sinead, in 2019, through to the first issue with this beautiful, important, dynamic piece of work and you all. But for the panelists, what would be your next dream job in fashion, TV, or elsewhere? One that would continue the change. What would be your dream job? Erin Rose, I feel like you have a list.
um, I'm very ambitious about things like this, and I'm always looking forward to what more I can do to implement representation and kind of visibility, but also because I love to work and I love to exist in the spaces that, I feel passionate about. It's my pleasure and my life's honor to do such. And I feel like doing British Vogue is honestly one of the great milestones of my life. So it's hard to even, I know it's like always think about what's next, but sometimes it's hard to even think about what's next because this has fulfilled me in such a deep and meaningful way. But however, I'm always thinking about what more I can do to move forward in fashion as a disabled person. And I feel like I would just love to continue to book editorial, but also I'm hoping that, with what we were able to have conversations about in this issue, I'm hoping that everyone read these things because, for example, like I would love to see more disabled people in fashion have work opportunities, whether it's on set or behind the camera or on the team of, something. And also, I would just love to continue to do just just the hard work of being a model and being on set for the hours and doing location shoots, doing the whole Fashion Week circuit from Paris to London to Milan to New York. I just want to be able to do everything, um, and really be able to be with my peers as well who are able-bodied, to share space with them on the runway, to share space with them in the campaigns, on the billboards, everything of the sort. And honestly, I've been thinking about acting a lot lately because I love film so much and I love movies so much. And I am not a trained actress and I don't know how to do things like that yet, but I'm willing. And I think my dream in that realm of life is to be able to work with A24 and be in one of their films or TV shows and be able to represent disability in a unique way that hasn't been seen on TV yet. I would have a great honor of doing that.
I mean, if only you knew an amazing disabled actress who has had some of the most iconic films.
Exactly.
I feel like there's a reverse mentorship going to happen there. But Erin Rose, on your birthday in New York, you told me that you wanted in the future to set up your own modeling agency.
That is like, so Sinead is absolutely right. My ultimate long-term goal is that when my modeling career is sort of like I'm less in front of the camera, what I want to do is is to be able to be in a place of myself and my career in fashion where I'm able to implement the change myself and build my own mother agency for talent and represent them throughout all fields of work as
Now,
long as they're like
to pitch for
disabled and
investment.
or trans. And that's one of my like dream goals is to be able to foster and represent talent in the way that I've been lucky to have in my life through my own agent, Richie. He's very inspiring to me, and he inspires me enough to the point that it's like I've seen what he has been able to create for people that are deserving of it because of their talent. And
Yeah.
so I want to do something like that too.
I love this idea. And as I said, now is the moment to pitch for investment, sponsors, acquisition, all of those things. But Ellie,
Absolutely.
do it. Ellie, I want to come to you. So this question came out of the chat box. And what Sarah has asked is, if you could have any job, gig, project in the world next, what would it be? What's on your list?
To model for New York.
Oh, to model in New York. Well,
Oh yes, we need you, Ellie.
yes,
And to be on the TV for more work.
yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Using TV.
That's my dream too, that we could all have a show together that's mostly maybe disabled people this time. Plenty non-disabled are
that would be
welcome
so
too, but like
good.
really catering like a whole show that's funny and bitchy and important, like all of it. It's not just like, oh, the sweet disabled people, because I'm not that sweet when I'm coming up against a wall, like there are a lot of things I can look back at like, whoa, oh my God, angry when that didn't work out. And that's really funny now, but in the time I was gonna. But, I think there are so many show ideas. And now that I see that we can find ways to do this, if we are made confident and comfortable and safe, that there are so many really funny and thoughtful ways to present ourselves, and people like Ryan O'Connell and Lena Dunham, and like, let's get JJ Abrams on it, let's get a Lost for disabled people. Like there's so many ideas
exactly
that could showcase how human, of course, we are, that a lot of people might not have experience seeing us in a way that makes them feel comfortable. So I love that film and television and fashion and all that present us in a way that is more palatable to take in. But then once you're in, you're like, oh, duh, what a fool I am to not look around me. I mean, that's what I hope. Because I also want to work with all these people that have been used to like really hustling a little more than I have. And I find a lot of people in the disabled community, like when they're like working through the day, they know how to do it. And that's important on a set. I love it. I want us all to work together in some capacity. I think it would be so much fun.
Yes, please. Yes, please. I'm going to manifest it.
Right?
Yes. And people in the comments are saying that they want to watch it and see it. But I think about Maysoon Zaid, who's an amazing amazing disabled comedian, and she talks about the idea of having the view as just all disabled people. And she's been pitching for that idea for a long time.
Absolutely.
I think would be incredible, and we need more of it. I
Mhm.
love this collective dream. For me, my next project or job, God, this is going to sound really silly and terrible, but I think I have
No,
it,
never.
or at least part of it. If you'd have said to me 2 years ago, Sinead, you're going to set up a company and you're going to work with some of the most extraordinary people that you will ever get to know in your life, I would have laughed at you, the idea of being a CEO and setting up a business. But you have all met in different ways, most of the Tilting Lens team and our wider network. And honestly, to get to do this work every day, not just this British Vogue project, but the other broader work that we do, would be the continuation of a dream. I mean, I need to learn more about cash flow and those things, but we'll
Me
I
too.
want to come to another question from Hannah. Hannah is a final year fashion student at university, and she is doing some work around disability in terms of her own lived experience too. What she wants us to ask about is, how important is it that more fashion shows include disabled models? And Erin, I may come to you for this one. And what are the realities or the practicalities of that?
Oh my goodness. Well, hello, Hannah. Thank you so much for this incredible question. It's my pleasure to answer you on that. Um, Seeing more disabled representation and visibility on the runway for luxury fashion brands has been one of the driving forces of my career for almost half a decade now. So since I started out, I've wanted this to be accomplished and implemented by the fashion industry. And to me, it's so important to have disability representation on the runway because the runway and fashion month and fashion weeks are when new trends are introduced onto the runway first, and that's where the buyers and editors and sort of like inner fashion community sees it on the live runway. They see these trends first on the live runway, but then it's exposed to the public. And fashion, whether luxury or retail, is such a huge part of contemporary culture and especially pop culture and the way people identify and see themselves in the media, in their day-to-day lives. Everyone participates in fashion and everyone knows of fashion, you know, like in a huge way because of the fact that people identify themselves and sort of come together through fashion and trends, which is a very real thing that happens. So, the fact that a place like the runway, which is a vehicle for not only trend setting and trend creation, but sort of like a vehicle of creative expression. And there have been so many incredible ideas executed on the runway through talent, through different types of models of different types of, ways of being in life, whether it's race, gender, um, and then littler details as well. Size, um, you know, I, as someone that was first on the outside of fashion before I ever started my modeling career, I was so enamored with the runway and what was able to be created through that space. But I was so in question of the fact that you never once saw a disabled person represented on the runway, whether they used a mobility aid, whether they had something, no, there was just nothing. There was
Yep.
just nothing.
And it
And
should to go forward too, Erin. And I think, and I hope you often take a moment to reflect back on the impact that you have had, not just on that visibility, but I think of you, I think of Gillian Mercado, I think of Ellie Goldstein, I think of these incredible disabled models that have had visibility and have made so many people feel seen and heard, while also acknowledge the road that's left to go and how much more we need to travel. And this really is kind of echoes a question that Chloe, who is a disabled fashion student, asks in the comments around the misconceptions and also the changes that are needed within the fashion system. I think one of the things that this issue really proved, or reminded me of at least, is that while we can be really focused on representation in runways, in campaigns, on covers, and in magazines, we can't forget to have the conversation and the need for the representation in rooms where decisions are made. We need CEOs, CMOs, chief financial officers, editor-in-chiefs,
absolutely.
lived experience and representation in those rooms across the industry, because often we focus on models and product. And while those are two key pillars, We have to engage the fabric of the system in order to truly create that radical change. But I want to ask another question because we are coming slightly close to the end of our time together. Leah asks, first of all, congratulations on an amazing, groundbreaking issue of British Vogue. But has the panel learned anything from each other after getting the time to work and collaborate together? Now, you have to say yes, not about me, but about yourself.
Yeah.
What have you learned from each other?
To have the confidence that Ellie and Aaron have, my God, it's so beautiful for real. Like, it makes me feel when I get down on myself, it's like, wait, this is not you have a choice what I can choose to amplify about myself, especially if I'm in a safe space. And then you really can convince other people, not convince other people that I'm beautiful, but convince other people that they're beautiful. And when other people feel beautiful, they regard other people as beautiful. And it's not just woo, woo, woo. It is part of how we are made. And the fashion industry can allow you more than other industries to feel that way. And that is beautiful to me, and that it's including. And to see Aaron, you know, I'd been talking with someone in the disabled community before I went, and they said, oh no, Aaron is like iconic. You are so lucky. I hadn't started yet. I just had been talking about Aaron, and it was like, I was kind of intimidated. I was like, oh my God, I'm like with the Naomi Campbell of like the transgender, like I'm, you know, I was a little intimidated. And
Selma, can I be very honest with
the
you?
intimidation was good. It was kind of like you were sexy fierce. Like when someone calls someone iconic, and I was so thrilled that you were recognized as a badass icon just by someone at lunch over coffee. And it changed my mind. It gave me more confidence. You know, I just wasn't like, okay, I'm being, you know, thrown something. I'm kind of the least physically disabled. Maybe I'm older than everyone. We all have our things, you know, we just all have whatever. And then when I knew Ellie was, it was like, oh my God, and she's done this. I just felt really genuinely excited. The same way I would if someone said, oh my God, you're going to do something with Christy Turlington and we'll put you on a chair so you don't look so small. Like it was like, ah, yay. So that's what it felt like to know I was going to be, you know, in this company that really is really fierce, for lack of a cooler word, but it made me feel really cool. And that would not have been this way without Tilting the Lens and these beauties that have come forward, and even my own acceptance of aging or changing disability or transient things that people are confused about. I don't know, this was just very freeing. And I think most importantly to people at home, what Ellie and Aaron and Christine, everyone has done that's been in this, makes me so proud, because if we're building more considerate people in the world, period, that are acknowledging beauty in different ways, that just makes sense, period.
I love that. And I think, if I could speak for us all, that realization of everybody's confidence in different ways. And I think confidence ebbs and flows, right? You're confident in the dressing room, then minute you get out onto set, you might be not so confident, and it depends on the space or the room. But I'm conscious that we have a captive audience here. And what I wanted to get a sense of from each of you is, what can this audience do? They're just about to go back to their day or to their evening and have some dinner or grab another coffee. So whether it's thinking about checklists and blueprints, in thinking about the buildings that they use, how they work, digital accessibility, or if it's thinking about growing their awareness of disability advocates, or just increasing their understanding of accessibility, what do we want the people who are participating in this webinar to do?
Don't be scared.
Tell me more, Ellie.
Okay. Don't be scared of disabilities. Be confident and never give up.
I love that. I think so often people are afraid of saying the wrong thing. They're afraid of using the wrong language. They're afraid of being embarrassed. And what that often means is that people say nothing at all. They do nothing. But the result of that is that disabled people continue to be excluded. And that we often say that it's better for somebody to not be embarrassed than for someone else to be excluded. And I think your point around don't be scared, keep trying, don't give up, make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. I make mistakes every day, and to keep trying. I love that. Ellie, thank you.
Thank you.
Erin, what about you? What can they go and
Ellie, I want to reiterate, thank you for saying something so poignant and so beautiful. You know, just the fact that like people
Thank
should not be afraid of disability. You were so right. You were so right. I think that what people can do from watching this really beautiful panel discussion about, you know, everything that we've talked about, when you face your life, always think about disability. Really think about disability and think about, the world around you for how it could be a more equitable and accessible place. Think about the fact that when you walk on the streets of, for example, many places in New York or throughout America or even in Europe itself, that the spaces that you might enter on a day-to-day basis are not accessible to many disabled people. I want the world to think consciously about disability and about the fact that there is so much that disabled people should have and so many things that disabled people do deserve out of existing in the universe, and what able-bodied people can do to empower disabled people.
Yeah. I notice, I do travel quite a bit, maybe a bit too much right now, but I've started to notice the hotels I stay in or the buildings I go in, the buildings that I used to work in frequently. And I notice how accessible they are or what they need. And sometimes I will talk to a person in charge there and say, gosh, I noticed I want to have a friend here, this and that, what could we do? This bed that you can't get a hoist under it, I see in this. What can we do to make this? Because I'd like them to stay here because the rest of your hotel is accessible, but the actual room can't get a transfer under, things like that. And I think it is important, if you have the time or think of it, the places that you frequent, check out how accessible they are. And maybe little changes could be made so you could see and come in contact with more people that need greater accessibility, and then your world opens up. But people don't know till they know. They might not have a lot of people that need the accessibility because they know it's not there, so they don't come in contact with what's needed to change in a way that they can understand easily. So it is nice to be an ally. Even if you are not, it's almost more important sometimes, they'll listen to the person that says, oh, we need their business every day. We're fine without having this accessible thing. But if the allies will start to bring it up too, then we really get something moving.
I can't agree enough with all of you. A couple of things that's standing out to me in terms of this thought process is I would love everybody's mindsets to shift, that accessibility is not ugly. I think for too long, we have designed for accessibility through a medical model, through a medical lens, often for disabled people, not with them or by them. I'm currently in New York. I'm staying in a hotel and it's nice. And my bathroom is accessible. The definition of accessibility pending. But I can't see myself in any of the mirrors. Because when it was designed by a non-disabled person, never imagining the experience of the individual, only ever looking as to whether or not it was legally compliant. And we really need to shift our mindset, which is why it's so important that one of the industries that we're having this conversation in is fashion. Because as challenging as fashion is, from its supplier network to the cost and accessing some of it, the reality is it can reframe how we think about the aesthetics of accessibility, and that's important.
Yeah.
I think making sure, to your point, Selma and Erin, that this is everybody's opportunity and responsibility. The next time you go to a restaurant, ask if it's accessible, then ask what they mean by accessible. Mm-hmm. And I think the reality is one of the things that I would love to see the shift. So often we create something to be accessible when a disabled person is in the room, never acknowledging the trajectory that has required in order for that person to be in the room. So for example, we will only ever have an interpreter if a deaf person is coming, which means that a deaf person can't decide at the last minute whether or not they want to go or not go, because there's also a cost, there's a timing implication. I would love for us as a society, in a personal and professional context, to have a new minimum standard of accessibility beyond just compliance, where people can show up, feel safe, and have a choice about when and where they participate. Because for too long, disabled people have to do the labor themselves or are excluded because there wasn't enough time or resources for them to be prioritized. So let's start afresh. We have, as I said, almost 100 people here. What I would love is for the 100 people who are here to get in touch with us in a week, in 5 days, 10 days. How are you experiencing seeing the world differently? What's the action you are taking away from here that you're going to put out into the world and embed from this? There's also some questions that we didn't get to today, which the Tilting the Lens team will share with Erin Rose, with Selma, and with Ellie. And what we will do is we will make sure that any answers that are given to us will be put up on our website so that you can get access to them and that your question is truly answered. I want to just take a moment to thank Erin, Selma, and Ellie for your time, for your trust in this extraordinary journey. And I really genuinely hope that this is not even a start, because lots of people have started this conversation in lots of rooms, but that what this is momentum, and that we are beating a rhythm that will have to continue. And you are very much so much of the reason that's part of that. I want to thank Catherine and Beth, our interpreters. I want to thank Anya and Emma from the Tilting the Lens team who are working in the background and making all of this happen. I want to thank the many people who have joined us for almost a full hour, which is a long time. And I want to ensure that you know that there'll be a recording of this webinar. There will also be a transcript, and we will take out some of the meatier chunks of the content so it's also digestible for people with all sorts of access accommodations. At the end of this webinar, you're going to receive a survey. As you can tell, I have once been a teacher. But the rationale of the survey goes back to Selma's point. We don't know what we don't know. We would love to gain a sense of what did you learn? What were the challenges in accessing this conversation today? And what do you want to know more of? What are you hungry to learn about? Because we want to help provide the visibility and that roadmap. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are today. This has been honestly a real treat and honor, and we will see you again very soon and email you with all of the updates as to when this content will be available to watch back. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sinead. Thank you, Selma. Thank you, Ellie. I love you all
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Love you all.
Thank you, audience, so much for your time. Thank you.